This happened about a month ago, and I'm still trying to come to terms with it. At 45, I never imagined I'd be caught up in something like this. But here we are. I've been divorced from Sarah for 3 years. We have a son, Tyler, who's 19 and currently in his second year at a private college. The split was ugly, and Sarah worked hard to turn Tyler against me. Unfortunately, it worked. Last year, she married a guy named Brad, a flashy salesman who seemed to think driving a BMW and wearing designer suits makes him special. Tyler is absolutely taken with him and constantly compares me to Brad, and never in my favor. The irony is, I'm doing fine. I'm an electrical engineer with a stable, well-paying job. I own my home outright and have solid savings. I'm just not showy. I drive a sensible sedan and dress like a normal person. But Sarah managed to convince Tyler that this makes me some kind of failure. When we divorced, I insisted on paying for Tyler's college education. It was important to me that he had every opportunity to succeed. I've been covering about $30,000 a year for tuition and expenses. I set up automatic payments to the school and gave him a credit card for living costs. Since the divorce, Tyler's attitude toward me has steadily deteriorated. Sarah encourages the disrespect, and Brad never bothers to intervene. Every time Tyler visits, our dinners turn into long, uncomfortable lectures about how amazing Brad is. According to him, Brad is more successful, more entertaining, and far more generous. Brad buys him expensive gifts and takes him on luxurious trips. Meanwhile, I'm just the invisible wallet who pays his tuition. At one point, Tyler asked for a car to use at school. Sarah insisted I should pay for it. Eventually, I got him a reliable used Honda, perfectly suitable for a college student. He wasn't impressed. He had hoped for something flashier, like Brad's BMW. Though he accepted it, he never stopped complaining about it. Last month, Tyler came over for a routine weekend visit. I had made dinner reservations at a nice restaurant, just a father-son night to catch up. At first, everything seemed fine. We chatted about his classes and summer plans for about half an hour. Then he started talking about a European vacation Brad and Sarah were planning for him over spring break. I casually asked whether Brad was covering the cost or if it was being taken from the college fund I had set up. Tyler bristled at the question and snapped that it wasn't my concern how Brad spent his money. Then he tossed in a dig, said Brad was generous, unlike certain people. From there, things quickly unraveled. He went off on how Brad would have never bought him a cheap Honda, and how I was always cutting corners. I tried steering the conversation in a different direction, but he wasn't letting it go. He started listing all the ways Brad was apparently superior to me. More successful, more fun to be around, more understanding. Then, without lowering his voice, he said something that made people at nearby tables stop eating and turn their heads. At least Mom's new husband isn't a loser like you. He wore the smug grin, like he had just scored some kind of victory. I stared at him for a few seconds, completely stunned. I could feel the eyes of other diners on us. I was humiliated, but I wasn't going to make a public scene. I simply asked for the check. Neither of us said a word on the way back. The car ride to his dorm was tense and silent. He must have known he'd gone too far, but he didn't say a word. Not even a half-hearted apology. I dropped him off and went home, my mind racing. That night, I sat with everything he'd said echoing in my head, and I realized I'd allowed this behavior by continuing to fund his life while he treated me like garbage. It had to stop. The following morning, I started making calls. First, I called the bank and canceled Tyler's credit card. Next, I contacted the college bursar's office and asked them to pause all new charges on his student account. Since I was the payer and account holder, I had full authority to do so. Then I phoned the insurance company and removed the Honda from my policy. After that, I drove to campus, used my spare key, and took back the car. The title and registration were in my name. Tyler had simply been listed as an authorized driver. Everything was well within my legal rights. By noon, his car was gone, the tuition account was frozen, and the credit card declined when he tried to buy lunch. I didn't call to explain anything. I figured he could piece it together on his own. If he believed I was a loser, he could experience life without my support and see how far that belief got him. Later that evening, The phone started ringing. First Tyler. I didn't answer. Then Sarah started calling again and again. I let them all go to voicemail. Her messages began angry. She demanded to know why Tyler's accounts had been frozen. By the third message, she sounded panicked. She said Tyler was freaking out. On the sixth call, I finally picked up. Sarah was hysterical. She asked what I had done and why I was being so cruel to Tyler. She said he was crying and didn't understand why his car and card were suddenly useless. I stayed calm and told her the truth. Tyler had made it crystal clear how little he respected me. He called me a loser, loud enough for strangers to hear. Since he believed that, I figured he no longer needed help from someone he considered so beneath him. She didn't respond right away. Then she exploded, yelling that I was violating the divorce agreement and had an obligation to pay for Tyler's college. I reminded her I'd been covering $30,000 a year, and that expecting some basic courtesy in return wasn't exactly unreasonable. Sarah tried defending Tyler by claiming he was just a teenager who didn't really mean what he said. I reminded her that Tyler was 19, already in college, and more than old enough to know that choices have consequences. She started crying, saying this would mess up his education. I told her he should have considered that before insulting me in public. The call ended with her abruptly hanging up. The following day, she called again, this time with Brad on the line. He tried taking the role of mediator, suggesting we find a way to resolve the issue. According to him, Tyler had learned his lesson and truly regretted his actions. I told Brad that if he believed Tyler was genuinely remorseful, then he was more than welcome to step in and cover Tyler's education expenses from now on. There was a long pause on the other end. Turns out, Brad's version of generosity didn't include footing actual bills. That was apparently where he drew the line. 3 days after I froze everything, Tyler finally reached out to me himself. He was crying, apologizing for what he'd said, and pleading with me to reactivate his credit card and give him the car back. He promised a change, to treat me with respect going forward. I told him apologies are easy, but real change is proven through actions, not just words. If he wanted my financial support, then respect had to be part of the deal, not just when he wanted something, but every day. I made it clear that the constant comparisons to Brad had to stop, along with the snide remarks about my lifestyle. Tyler agreed to everything I said, and genuinely sounded like he meant it. I told him I'd consider reopening his accounts, but warned that things would be different now. Trust and support would have to be earned, not assumed. After that call, I decided to give him another chance. I reinstated his college account so he could continue with school, but kept the car and credit cards on hold. I told him those would only be returned once he consistently demonstrated respectful behavior over time. I also had a direct conversation with Sarah about setting boundaries. I told her flat out that if she kept encouraging Tyler to disrespect me, I'd cut off financial support permanently. She didn't like hearing that, but she realized I meant it. She agreed to stop undermining my relationship with him and said she would encourage him to treat me with more respect. Surprisingly, the situation has brought some improvement between Tyler and me. Losing access to the car and credit cards seemed to open his eyes to how much he relied on me. Our conversations have become more respectful, and he stopped throwing constant comparisons to Brad in my face. Right now, Tyler is still getting by without the car and is handling his expenses with cash. So far, he appears to be making an effort. Brad, on the other hand, has gone noticeably quiet since realizing what it would really mean to provide for Tyler himself. It's easy to play the generous stepdad when someone else is covering tuition, insurance, and daily expenses. But the minute there's real financial responsibility involved, his enthusiasm vanished. All of this taught me a valuable lesson. Financial help should never come at the cost of dignity. I've been so caught up in supporting Tyler's future that I forgot to expect something as basic as respect in return. Some might say I was being too hard on him, but I don't see it that way. Tyler's an adult now, and adults need to understand that relationships aren't one-sided. You don't get to belittle someone and still expect their financial support just because you're family. In the end, I think the result has been for better. Tyler has started treating me with more consideration. Sarah has backed off, and Brad has discovered that being the cool stepfather comes with responsibilities he's not so quick to accept. Sometimes, setting firm boundaries is the only way to shift unhealthy family dynamics. I'm cautiously optimistic that Tyler and I can rebuild something healthier, based on respect, not entitlement. The Honda is still in my garage, and Tyler brings it up every time we talk. I tell him the same thing each time. Once he's shown me 6 months of consistent, respectful behavior, the car's is again. So far, he's on the right track, but there's still work to do. This entire experience was a wake-up call for all of us.